The world was watching. In a dazzling news studio, with bright lights and flags from every country fluttering behind them, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's voice cut through the silence like a thunderclap. "Captain Ibrahim Traoré," he said, eyes sharp and cold, "work with us now, or face the consequences." Those words echoed around the globe, carried instantly by TV screens, radios, and phones. Millions held their breath. Who was this Ibrahim Traoré, standing silently miles away, knowing this ultimatum could change everything? In Burkina Faso, Ibrahim sat quietly in a small, dimly lit room with his closest advisors. The weight of Netanyahu's warning pressed heavy on his shoulders. It wasn't just politics. It was a threat to the future of his people, his country. Ibrahim's gaze hardened. He wasn't the kind to bow down to threats, but inside, a storm raged. Was this the moment to fight, or to find a fragile path to peace? The countdown had begun. Despite the bright studio lights and global eyes fixed on the stage, Ibrahim Traoré was calm. But inside, his heart pounded. For years, Ibrahim had fought to protect his nation from outside powers that wanted to control Africa's future. Now Netanyahu's ultimatum wasn't just a warning. It was a challenge. He remembered the faces of his people, children who dreamed of safety and freedom. They trusted him to stand tall. His advisors urged caution, warning that refusal could spark war or sanctions that would crush Burkina Faso's fragile economy. But Ibrahim's answer came not from fear, it came from hope. He believed in his people's strength, their spirit to survive and rise against any threat. Tonight, the world would hear his answer. But no one knew what it would be. Back in the studio, the atmosphere was electric. Reporters whispered, cameras zoomed in, and millions across continents waited. Netanyahu's message had shaken the political world, but Ibrahim's response was still a mystery. Would he break? Would he accept the ultimatum, giving up his country's sovereignty? Or would he risk everything, standing firm against a powerful opponent? As Ibrahim prepared to speak, his mind flashed back to his childhood. Days spent playing under the sun, dreaming of a future where Africa was free from foreign threats. Now, as the camera lights warmed his face, he knew this moment would decide more than just politics. It would decide hope or fear, pride or submission. And as he took a deep breath, the world leaned in, waiting for his voice to break the silence. Ibrahim Traoré's eyes burned with memories, not just of recent struggles, but of a history written in pain and resilience. He remembered the stories his grandfather told him, how their ancestors had fought to protect their land from invaders and colonizers who wanted to steal their freedom. Now, decades later, the threat came in a new form. Powerful leaders from distant lands like Netanyahu, trying to dictate the future of Africa's leaders. This wasn't just politics. This was a test of pride and survival. Ibrahim felt the burden of his people on his shoulders, a burden heavier than any he had ever carried. Yet with that weight came an unshakable resolve. He would not betray the dreams of those who came before him. No ultimatum, no threat would break his spirit. But as the cameras prepared to capture his response, a quiet fear whispered in his heart. How much was he willing to risk for freedom? The studio lights dimmed slightly. The world waited. Netanyahu's ultimatum had been sharp and cold, but Ibrahim's silence was louder. Minutes stretched, thick with tension. Every second felt like an eternity. His advisors glanced nervously, urging caution. Outside, millions of people from Burkina Faso and beyond held their breath, watching, hoping. Would Ibrahim back down, or would he stand tall, come what may? The silence wasn't weakness. It was a moment of deep reflection. In that silence, Ibrahim's mind raced, not with doubts, but with visions. Visions of a future where his people were free from threats. Visions of unity and strength. The world might see a quiet pause, but inside a storm was gathering. Finally, Ibrahim leaned forward. His voice was calm, steady, but carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken stories. "To my people," he began, eyes fierce yet full of hope, "and to the world watching now, freedom is not a gift to be demanded. It is a right to be fought for." He paused. "I hear the ultimatum loud and clear, but threats will not break us. They will only make us stronger." The studio gasped. Netanyahu's expression tightened. Ibrahim's words were not just a refusal, they were a promise that he would fight for his nation's future, no matter the cost. But deep inside, Ibrahim knew the path ahead would be filled with pain and sacrifice. This was no simple defiance. This was a battle for the soul of a people, and the world was watching every heartbeat. As Ibrahim's words echoed across the globe, reactions exploded everywhere. In the streets of Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, people gathered around flickering TVs, eyes wide with hope and fear. Children clung to their parents, sensing the weight of history unfolding. News anchors across continents replayed Ibrahim's message, praising his courage. But behind closed doors in powerful capitals, alarms rang loud. Diplomats whispered, plotting next moves. Could a single man's defiance change the course of history? Meanwhile, Ibrahim returned to his office, a small, humble space lined with books and photographs of his homeland. His phone buzzed non-stop. Messages poured in from allies and skeptics alike. Some warned him to reconsider. Others offered support. But Ibrahim felt the deepest call from his people. They needed a leader who stood tall, even when the world threatened. Tonight, the world watched. Tomorrow, the consequences would begin. That night, Ibrahim sat quietly with his young daughter, Amina. She looked up at him with innocent eyes, unaware of the storms brewing outside. "Papa," she whispered, "will everything be okay?" His heart clenched. How to explain the danger without stealing her peace? He took her small hand in his, voice steady but soft. "I promise, Amina, I will do everything to keep you and our people safe. But sometimes, to protect what we love, we must be brave, even when it's scary." She nodded slowly. In that moment, Ibrahim felt the true weight of his duty, not just as a leader, but as a father. The world saw a defiant captain on screen. But at home, he was a man torn between love and war. He vowed silently to fight for peace, no matter the cost. While Ibrahim prepared to face the coming storm, unseen forces moved swiftly. Powerful men in distant boardrooms plotted to isolate Burkina Faso. Economic pressure, media campaigns, and secret meetings began to tighten the noose. Netanyahu's allies spoke of sanctions and embargoes. The world's eyes might be on the showdown, but behind the scenes, a quieter battle raged. Ibrahim's team scrambled to find allies, friendly nations who believed in sovereignty and justice. Yet every day brought new challenges. Supplies grew scarce, voices of doubt grew louder. Still, Ibrahim's resolve did not waver. He knew this was more than a fight for politics. It was a fight for dignity, for freedom, for the soul of a nation, and he would never back down. Days passed, and the pressure on Ibrahim grew heavier. The world outside his small office seemed to close in. Trade routes tightened, allies hesitated. Sanctions whispered by powerful nations began to bite. Yet inside Ibrahim's heart, there was no surrender. He looked around at his team, tired but unbroken. Their sacrifices were real, families missing meals, factories slowing down. But surrender was not an option. His phone buzzed with messages from international leaders, some urging caution, others offering quiet support. Ibrahim thought of his people, farmers in dusty fields, mothers waiting in hospitals, children dreaming of schools. They needed him to stand firm. The isolation was painful, but it was a test of strength. a test of faith. And Ibrahim knew that sometimes the darkest nights gave birth to the brightest dawns. In the streets of Burkina Faso, a different story was unfolding. Despite shortages and uncertainty, the people gathered in towns and villages, inspired by their leaders' defiance. Songs of hope echoed in marketplaces. Prayers rose at dusk. Neighbors shared what little they had. Children painted murals of Ibrahim, strong, fearless, a symbol of their fight for freedom. News crews captured faces alight with pride, tears in their eyes. The world saw a nation united, bound by courage and love for their homeland. For Ibrahim, this was the greatest victory yet. He was not alone. Every heartbeat in Burkina Faso was a drumbeat of resistance, and together they stood, undaunted, unbroken. But the storm was far from over. Behind the scenes, Netanyahu's message became sharper. Threats escalated. Warnings turned into ultimatums delivered through international pressure and covert maneuvers. Ibrahim's security teams worked around the clock, aware that the danger was not just political, it was personal. Late one night, as the world slept, a message came through, a warning that his family might be targeted. The weight of leadership crushed harder than ever. Yet, in that moment of fear, Ibrahim's resolve only deepened. He whispered to himself, "For my people, for my children, I will face whatever comes." The standoff was no longer just a battle of words, it was a battle of wills, and the world waited, breathless, for the next move. Just when the pressure seemed unbearable, a surprising voice broke through the noise. A respected African leader from a neighboring country stepped forward. On live television, she spoke with steady conviction. "We stand with Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Sovereignty is not negotiable. Burkina Faso's fight is the fight of every free nation." Her words spread like wildfire. Diplomatic lines buzzed with renewed hope. For Ibrahim, it was more than just support. It was a lifeline. This unexpected ally reminded the world that strength was not measured by threats or ultimatums, but by unity and courage. As the studio cameras captured this breakthrough, Ibrahim felt the burden lighten just a little. But Netanyahu's gaze hardened. The game was far from over. Away from the spotlight, Ibrahim found a moment of peace in the early morning hours. He walked alone in a quiet garden near his home, the cool breeze brushing his face. Memories of his childhood flooded him, times of laughter, simple joys, and dreams of a better future. He thought of his people, exhausted but unbroken. They believed in him. He could not falter. No matter what lay ahead, Ibrahim's promise was clear: to protect his nation's dignity and hope, even if it meant walking through fire. In that stillness, he whispered a prayer for strength, and with renewed resolve, he prepared to face the next chapter of this battle. Suddenly, the world was shaken by breaking news. A powerful international media outlet uncovered secret documents exposing a covert plan to destabilize Burkina Faso. The revelations shocked millions and sparked outrage. For Ibrahim, it was a vindication. Proof that the threats against him were not just empty words, but part of a wider conspiracy. The global spotlight shifted. Pressure mounted on Netanyahu and his allies. But Ibrahim remained humble, knowing this was just one battle in a long war. His fight was not for glory. It was for the future of his people. And with every challenge, his courage only grew stronger. The air was thick with tension. Every news channel was glued to the broadcast. Netanyahu appeared once again, his voice colder and sterner than before. He repeated his ultimatum, but this time the world saw something different in Ibrahim Traoré's eyes. Calm, unwavering. Ibrahim stood before the cameras, his heart pounding, but his voice steady. "We are not pawns to be bought or broken," he declared. "Burkina Faso's future belongs to its people, not to foreign powers issuing threats." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of 1,000 hopes. The world gasped. A hush fell over the international stage. This was not just defiance. This was courage, resilience, and love for one's homeland. The standoff was no longer about politics. It was about dignity. And Ibrahim's final stand would echo through history. As Ibrahim's message spread, something incredible happened. In homes, schools, and streets across Burkina Faso, tears welled up, not from sadness, but from overwhelming pride. Families held hands and whispered prayers. Children looked up at the sky, dreaming bigger than ever before. Even those who feared what might come found hope in Ibrahim's bravery. He had become more than a leader. He was the heart of a nation refusing to break. And on this night, as the stars shone bright over Ouagadougou, a quiet joy blossomed, proof that even in the darkest hours, light could find a way through. The crisis had not ended, but a new chapter had begun. Ibrahim's courage inspired nations and reminded the world of the power of standing firm for what is right. In the weeks that followed, discussions replaced threats. Dialogue replaced fear. The world began to see Ibrahim not as a threat, but as a leader of unwavering strength and honor. And deep within his heart, Ibrahim knew this was only the beginning. A promise to his people that no matter what storms came, they would face them together. Because true strength is not in power or weapons, but in hope, unity, and the courage to never give up. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe to support our journey of sharing real stories that touch the heart. Drop a comment below. What part of Ibrahim Traoré's courage inspired you the most? Your words can inspire others too. Let's build a community of strength and hope together. Thank you for watching. Stay brave. Stay hopeful.